Pathway Studios in Johnston proper. You are live from the path.
And you're listening to Live from the Path. We're coming from the Pathway Studios here in Johnston proper.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Yes.
That's us.
I'll start asking us a question, so we got something to jump off from.
Apparently so.
Hey, here's what we got going on the show today. Hey, so and I'm gonna give. I don't want to give this away. I feel like this is how you keep people on, because you got what am I thinking of? You can build some momentum, some suspense.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: the results are in from the Live from the Path Facebook poll. The question was: Boova has never heard of Pat Sajak of Wheel of Fortune fame. Have you? And after, let's just go a decent number of votes. It's 93% to 7. And
wait a minute. How many votes were there?
14.
Oh, buddy.
So we're going to call that a landslide.
So I was the only one who voted no.
You were the lone person to not have heard of Pat Sajak.
How am I the only one who's never heard of Pat Sajak?
Did you look him up?
No. What?
You still haven't taken him in?
No, I haven't taken him in.
You're missing out on that.
I know. See, here's the deal. I know the show, but I didn't know the name.
What goes on right when they start Wheel of Fortune? They go, and the host, and you like what?
I have never once intentionally watched a show of Wheel of Fortune.
Do you know Vanna White?
The gal, yes, the gal who does the letters, right?
Boy, live such a sexist life.
The gal that does is she not identified as a gal?
You remember the woman, but not the dude.
Oh, how? Okay, interestingly, that I'm sexist against men. Yeah, no, I've heard her name 1,000 more times in my life than I've heard Pat Sajak's name.
I'd like to go on the record. She is more attractive than him.
That's true.
I would agree with that statement.
I have looked at her more than him. When I was
that's fair.
Flipping through the channels, if she were on, I'd stop back in the day and go, hey.
Hey, that's Miss White.
Those are nice letters.
Hello.
Hello,
Vanna.
Those are nice letters.
I would not think to Pat, that's one nice suit you're wearing.
I guess I've never looked at what he dresses. Maybe he dresses all right.
I would not know. I didn't know the
Better
man
than
by
me.
name until a few weeks ago.
Okay. All right. Anyway, it was a resounding defeat for Boova's Way.
Here's the deal. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that poll on my personal Facebook, and I'm gonna see what happens with you know.
You will embarrass yourself. Okay. I would not do this.
I'm doing it. Here's the deal. My social media
this.
exists for things other than my glory nowadays, which is exactly why I'm going to do this.
If you struggle at all with self-confidence, self-image,
Dan, have
self-worth,
you ever met me?
No, I'm just saying, if secretly, sometimes the most vocal people are the most people.
Okay, fair enough. Right? Valid point.
If you struggle at all, I wouldn't do it.
Do not invite.
I'm just giving you. See, not everyone listens to me, but I'm saying.
Dan, this is exactly
I only say things if I mean it.
I'm going in to do this. How do you make a poll on Facebook?
Here's what we'll do. We'll catch up. We'll have 2 weeks because we're out next week. But we'll catch up 2 weeks from now and see. The evaluation is, 1, do Boova's friends know Pat Sajak? And 2, should Boova always listen to Dan's wisdom? I believe the answer is going to come in tandem.
How do you spell his last name?
Sajak.
Sajak?
It says Sajak.
It's ridiculous.
Did you intentionally say it wrong?
Yeah, well, I can't say it aloud. I was just typing it.
I know, but you worked in call centers. People call and give you your name, and there's people in the call center who say it wrong, like they respell it in their own mind and then pronounce it wrong, even though someone who knows their name legitimately.
Have you ever heard of Pat Sajak?
All right. Anyway, that's okay. Got that out of the way. That's what we're going on here to Live from the Past.
This is outstanding.
Secondly, I don't know, Dan, did you see the article? Someone had posted an article about how effective the title of the article, this is from The Atlantic, is called "They Tried to Start a Church Without God. For a While It Worked."
I started reading it, but whatever I was doing, I didn't have time, so I was going to go back, but didn't.
I skimmed it. It's super long, but we're going to read through some of it because it's pretty interesting. And
you wanted speakers and excitement, but just no God.
That's right. It's the people trying to replace the church experience, but do it without God because, well, people still need community.
Because everybody comes for the show.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll talk through that because I thought there was some interesting, not only to know what people are trying and basically how it's going, because I think otherwise what we believe, people are competing with the church and they're just creating community and that it's going off on rockets, and that's not really what's happening. And secondly, I think it does have implications or teaches us, I think, things that we already know about the core of why people do attend, regardless of what the periphery things are. Kind of what they're actually being drawn into, and that as core effect, Jesus actually matters. It's integral to what we do. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting article. There was also, do you guys remember the Bible man, answer man, Hank Hanegraaff?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Pat Sajak?
Pat Sajak? Yes, I know Pat Sajak.
I think he's in line next when Hank retires. So Hanegraaff, the Bible answer man.
Oh, okay.
We
All right.
just
Sorry.
talking about,
Yeah.
Anyway, so he got booted off a lot of stations. We talked about this when it happened because he became an Eastern Orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there was an article about him. It said, Hank Hanegraaff, also known as the Bible Answer Man, revealed how God supernaturally saved him during a recent brush with death amid his ongoing battle with cancer, allowing him to see his 69th birthday. So I thought this was just kind of interesting. It said, in a video posted on July 17th, the host of the nationally syndicated Bible Answer Man radio broadcast announced that he recently underwent allogenic stem cell transplantation, a potentially curative treatment for mantle cell lymphoma, and the surgery was successful. Quotes, weirdly. During his 4-day hospital stay, the radio host said he had the time for reflection and thought of what it is that God has for me to do in the remaining years of my life. And I do believe God's going to give me many more years, he said. I don't want to be presumptive, but I almost died. I had passed out, I had gone unconscious, and the time in ICU was just a blur. I remember little bits and pieces of it, but when my kids and my wife told me about what I went through in the ICU, it was like they were talking about a different person. Hanegraaff revealed that if it weren't for his son David visiting exactly the right time at the hospital, he wouldn't be alive today. That he's the one that saw that all of a sudden my speech was incoherent, and then I went unconscious and got the nurses in and got me in the ICU. I was a close brush with death, still feeling a lot of the effects of that. That he came within a whisper of being in the presence of the Lord. Says it makes you look at life completely differently. I will not die but live, and will proclaim what the Lord has done. He supernaturally saved me from dying. Anyway, I just thought, what you suspicious of this categorization?
No, just anytime the whole supernaturally thing comes in, it hits me weird.
Should we just stop using the phrase supernaturally?
Yeah.
Because if you said, hey, the Lord stepped in and did something, I'd be like, yeah, that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
But if the Lord did the voodoo on it or did the supernatural.
Right, yeah, exactly. There's nothing supernatural about it. It's just how he works. It's how he does things. Whether it was through medicine or not, just because it was miraculous or not, didn't mean it wasn't God. If God saved you through chemotherapy, that was still God saving you. There was nothing supernatural about the concept of chemotherapy working. Not to say he doesn't do things supernaturally, like, no, we didn't seek any medical advice, we didn't see what happened, and then, my loved one was miraculously cured. That's awesome. I just don't like the word supernatural.
Yeah, I suppose it is. It is framed from a human perspective. It is something beyond what we believe is natural, but it's superhuman natural. For God, it's just natural.
Yeah,
that is how
absolutely.
The Lord can and does behave.
Right, it's just how he does things.
So, okay, here's I've got a whole different twist on this.
Okay.
As I was listening to you talk about this, I'm thinking, okay, he was 69, you say?
Yeah.
So does he have, like, he's really attached to this life, for being the Bible answer man? And then that was my first thought, and I thought, well, at what age do you start thinking, well, I am 69.
Actually, it's interesting you
or
mentioned
85 that, or I don't know what age that is.
Because when he said, I came within a whisper of being in the presence of the Lord, it made me think of Paul. I could be in the presence of the Lord or I could stay with you. And he's like, well, I got work to do here, so I guess I'll stay. But I came within a whisper of being in the presence of the Lord, felt like, shoo, I just skimmed by. I made it still.
Good thing I'm still here.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
In the presence of you all, I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that just kind of struck me like, well, wait a minute. I mean, is that off?
I would say shoot.
Yeah.
I was almost in the presence.
Yeah, exactly. I was almost in the throne room of King Jesus.
Dirty rat. Who came in my room?
Right. Yeah.
It's that stupid kid I had.
What would be your regret?
You're
Would you
out of the
regret
will.
be leaving this earth, or would you regret be missing heaven? Like, that's the deal.
I mean, like, we don't want to die, but he seemed like he was really glad he didn't die.
Right. Thankfully, I'm here with you still.
Yeah. I don't know. That should like made me just kind of wonder. He's big radio guy, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's just you get a certain ego. You think, yeah, but other people need to die, but I don't know if I really want to.
I should remain. I should abide.
Yeah. His guy.
Interesting.
Hey, just a heads up.
What?
We're 5 minutes into my poll. I have 12 votes that, yes, they all know who Pat Sajak is.
I hope you are strong.
Oh, Boova. Oh, you're in a real business.
The comments go from sounds like a Wheel of Fortune clue to a gif of Jack Nicholson going.
I warned you, my friend. It's only going to get worse.
I'm just saying. On our Live from the Path poll, we got 14 votes. I wanted to get an exponentially large amount of votes, and if we're giving this 2 weeks, we're 6 minutes in. I got 12.
Oh man,
we'll see when you break.
Oh no, this is gonna be great. At the end of this, I'm gonna be like, I had no idea who this was, and then I'm gonna have a horde of people that are gonna be upset at me.
We're gonna find Boova in the fetal position, sucking
what
on a grape.
What happened to Boova? I don't know who this
sucking on an orange.
I know who Pat Sajak is. I'm sorry.
Come cuddle me,
I'm gonna
Pat.
get a tweet from Pat Sajak that's like, I know who I am.
I should tag him. I'll tag him on the Twitter. Certainly he tweets.
Pat Sajak. Do you know who Pat Sajak is?
I'll ask the same question, Pat Sajak. Do you know John Boova III? We'll see.
He'll probably be like, yes.
I hope there's a Jack Nicholson gif of him going,
No, sir.
nope.
You can't handle the truth. Okay.
Wait,
He'll
does
say,
that
yes,
have
I do,
anything-
and that does not
Hey,
look like him.
I know that reference. Does that have anything to do with Pat Sajak?
No, Jack Nicholson.
Okay, I'm just making sure that he wasn't in that movie also, because I obviously don't know the man.
I don't think he does movies.
This is why I don't know him.
He was in the background on the TV.
This is
Yes, there are 3 R's.
in the courtroom. He's in the background. Wait, is that Pat Sajak back there? Yes, it is.
Oh man.
I hope we don't owe him money for saying his name so many times.
No, I don't think he can copyright his own likeness.
Can you?
I mean, not your name, right? Not for casual conversation.
I mean, yeah, we can't make his T-shirts probably, but we can say it.
Right.
I'm gonna make a T-shirt that says "I don't know who Pat Sajak
I'm not
is."
Pat Sajak.
Yeah. Pat who with a question mark on it?
You have any W's?
This is gonna be great.
You know what calls into question, Boova, is really what you do with your time. Because, obviously the rest of the world has at least used some of their precious time to understand who Pat Sajak is.
Okay, that's a valid point. Am I wrong for not knowing him? Is that what you're trying to argue?
Yeah, it's not. I think explicitly that you're wrong for not knowing Pat Sajak. It means that you could be otherwise doing nefarious things with your time for having not been exposed to him.
Okay, yeah. So the lack of Wheel of Fortune in my life and the lack of understanding who Pat Sajak is could lead to nefarious things.
Yeah, like you could be spending all your time on 4chan plotting how to create a video game out of shoelaces.
Right, exactly. Like this whole time I could have been tagging subway cars
Right.
or understanding who Pat Sajak was.
That's right.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
You make a mean afro with the spray can, but otherwise don't know anything legit.
Boova. Pat who?
Okay. Let's see. So let's get to this article, and then we're going to catch up with Boova had a wingding of a day, and so we're going to catch up with it. So this was from The Atlantic, so kind of an interesting source for this. It was, the title of the article again was, "They tried to start a church without God. For a while, it worked. Secular organizers started their own congregations, but to succeed, they need to do a better job of imitating religion." And there are a couple conclusions in this article that I think they've come to the wrong conclusion, but let's at least kind of talk through the setup. It said when Justina Walford moved to New York City 9 years ago, she never felt more alone. She'd left behind her church, her God, and her old city, Los Angeles. Then a secular congregation called Sunday Assembly filled the spiritual void, at least for a time. Walford had just turned 40. As a child, she had been deeply religious. Her parents had no interest in religion and didn't understand why she would. They'd sent her to a Christian school in hopes of good discipline and education. Good, that's what we're known for. Spankings. But Justina fell headlong into faith, delighting in her church community and dreaming of one day becoming a pastor herself. By the time she turned up in New York, her faith had long since unraveled, a casualty of overseas travel that made her question how any one religious community could have a monopoly on truth. What's interesting is that Christianity is pretty prevalent almost everywhere. I don't know what about overseas does this
Pretty
type of
much
thing.
everywhere.
But still, she grieved the loss of God. It was like breaking up with someone that you thought was your soulmate. Wolford told me, "It's for the better. It's for your own good," she remembered thinking. Even though it no longer made sense to her to believe, she felt a gaping hole where her church, her people, her psalms, her stained glass windows used to be. So it's interesting because like that's the description of it. I think that the attempts to frame the article as if it's a community issue, of which I think she believes as well, and it would be my first inkling to say I'm not sure that's what the gap is. I'm not. I don't think the hole's just people. I think
Right.
In fact, I've made the case that like when it comes to straight up community, camaraderie, people kind of supporting you and whatever it is your life circumstances are, the average bar on a Saturday night will compete with the shape of the thing.
Right.
People around asking you how you are, remembered your stories or whatever. But like there's something distinctly different about a religious community that is not the same thing as your Saturday night bar. Even though most post-evangelicals will claim to have found it in the bar. There's shades of people, but it's not the same thing. Anyways, so then Walford read an article about Sunday Assembly, a community started in Great Britain in 2013 that had spread quickly across the Atlantic to her doorstep. Members gather on Sunday, sing together, listen to speakers, and converse over coffee and donuts. So far, nailing it. Meetings are meant to be just like church services, but without God. That's it, she thought. That's what I want. When Walford shed her faith, she joined a large and fast-growing group, the nuns, or the religiously unaffiliated. So we've talked about these folks, the people who are otherwise walking, or say that they're not affiliated, and they do not, they're not particularly antagonistic about it. So they're not necessarily people who would say, look, hey, we're hardcore atheist or agnostic. They're how you would think of agnostic, except they don't even care. Like, they're just not, they don't even care to speak on. It says secular congregations such as Sunday Assembly and Oasis, a similar group started in 2012, seek to offer a solution to this. Both were founded by faithless seekers hoping to carry on certain aspects of religious life, the community, the moral deliberation, and the rich sense of wonder. When they were growing, I like this moral deliberation point. I don't ever really deliberate. Does that go on in your church, Dan? You were like, hey, thou shalt not. And people are like, well, let's speak this over.
Can we have a conversation about this?
Yeah. I want to talk this over. That's not how I want to live my life.
Are you sure?
Now, is the thou like the them, they? or is it...
As long as it's not me, right? So,
I'm having problems with the pronouns.
when they were growing so rapidly in their early years, these congregations were heavily covered by media outlets. The hot new atheist church gushed a 2013 Daily Beast headline about Sunday Assembly. HuffPost noted that the number of assemblies had doubled in a single weekend in 2014. The media coverage emphasized the new community's high-energy services, its celebratory message, and the top-of-your-lungs group renditions of pop anthems such as Living on a Prayer. For those uncomfortable with the level of overt spirituality, even within relatively liberal denominations such as Unitarian Universalism, secular communities offered a different option. But even as the growth of nuns has revved up in the intervening years, the growth of secular congregations hasn't kept pace. First of all, is that a surprise? Does that surprise you? No. Yeah, I'm not surprised either.
People are stupid.
Well, right. Like they know that you've it's put on to a certain extent. Like it's a put on for something, and the question is like, what is the value of the shape of it if the thing in the middle isn't there?
Right.
Like, can't I just solve this in a bar on a Saturday night or at somebody's house for game night or something?
Yeah.
It took the aspects of the thing and said, if we can mimic this, it will grow without missing the. It's taking the leaves actually, or the fruits of the vine, the grapes, and putting them all together and moving them somewhere else and saying, look, they didn't have to be attached to the vine, and I think that's the mistake.
Yeah.
So
just
it's
get rotten grapes.
And what's interesting, and I thought bringing up how other places had talked about it was interesting because I do remember seeing articles like that. I remember seeing people like, "Hey, man, it's a hot new thing. Like the atheists are finding church communities," and because I don't care to follow up on it, I would have no sense as to whether they're succeeding or not. And it's interesting to find out that things aren't going very well. So the question is, let me ask you guys before we get to that part of the article. What are the complications? Why don't you think these things are succeeding? Besides, like the core answer of obviously, they're missing Jesus.
Well, they've been going on for years. I mean, I go to Kiwanis tomorrow morning. For some people, that's their church. It's a civic organization. There is service to the community and the world involved. There are national conventions. We say a Pledge of Allegiance, so you get your little national in there. For some, that's this community. They hang out. They do stuff. I mean, like you can find community anywhere.
Right. It's not outlandish that you can't like set up a communal thing that provides support networks and people getting together.
It's the concept of poker night.
Yeah. And people can smell if they're just trying to make a buck, a business out of it. Like, oh, the church makes money, we can make money. It's like, but I'm not going to give to you because for the purpose of giving.
And are they anti-church? Is that a fair way to put this? Like, are they trying to go against the establishment of the church? And that's one of their motives for it, or is it just trying to find community outside of religion? Or
I think it's that.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm framing correctly in my thought process.
I think it's a dollar thing.
Really?
There's big dollars. How much money does Hope Lutheran bring in on a weekend?
I mean, yeah. A lot,
right? I mean,
okay,
that's not a bad business,
right?
When you're not selling anything,
right? Yeah, exactly. And then people start realizing, you
got to have a building and some overhead.
Yeah. You know what's interesting though, Dan? I guess now that I think about your Kiwanis example, there is at least a center around a moral good for Kiwanis, an intent to otherwise help do something good as a group. And it's not just moral right and wrong. It's we get together with an intention of positively impacting the world around us.
Yeah.
That does not appear as if that is the center of this thing. Whereas the morality, or let's just think of the belief system of a Christian church, implicit has an implication that it changes what you do, which otherwise impacts the way the world is around you or how you interact with it.
Right.
Without that moral center here. Or a specific moral guiding principle like a Lions Club or a Kiwanis or something like that, or would have, that does feel like it would admit, like you just don't have an imperative to be there.
Well, that moral directive becomes unifying, and so without that, I see your point. Like it doesn't really make sense. Like if it's purely social, I can't imagine it stays very strong for very long. Like, hey, let's go to a house of non-prayer and go hang out together and listen to Bon Jovi.
Right.
Like that just seems like something that people may get involved in on a whim and be excited about, kind of the concept of them being big at the beginning.
Yep.
But dwindling entirely. Like I don't see a motivating factor that allows me to want to be involved in that. Even anti-church, whatever it may be, or pushing for a social venue without the need for religion.
Yep.
I just don't see it as something that's unifying. I think it's purely entertainment, and people get bored of that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
People jump on things as a fad for a reason, and if that fad doesn't stay, it's because people get bored of it. They move on to the next thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's why bars change the types of things that they do every 5 years.
Yeah, there's not many bars that last for 20-plus years unless it's a group of locals that have gone there for 15 years, and it's only because they drink for free most of the time. Everybody they know is there, and they don't know anything else.
Right. No, others do. So it says, the New York Sunday Assembly was everything that Justina Walford had been hungering for since leaving her faith. Meetings involved sermons and quotes from scientists, artists, and academics. Members sang pop songs together and snapped their fingers to poetry readings. Old-timers chatted by the snack table and invited newbies to meals outside the group. I just fell in love with it, Walford said. I love the singing. I love the interaction. I love once a month seeing the same people. Once a month?
Wow.
Either
they lost people even once a month?
Either she only attends once a month, or other people only attend once a month, or they only have it once a month.
Right.
It's not clear. She became an organizer, one of the leaders of the chapter, working long volunteer hours to put each service together. That lasted for a couple of years, and then things began to fall apart. I think that's a pretty. So think of that as initial clue, right? That's every church goes through that.
Right.
Is you need people to commit to serving others in this way or another. If I have a long term, if I think the thing that we are otherwise gathering for is of a level of importance of which my sacrifice is worth it, and is even a good way of being in service to that, I'm in.
Right.
To the extent that there is not something in the center that serves that. Now it's just kind of self-immolation. Like what?
Yeah, why have I been doing this for this long when I don't really have it?
Yeah. If it's not otherwise providing a good, and it can't just be a good, it has to be a certain weight of good. Now, I could be wrong, Dan, and stop me if I am, but like, there's not 200 people showing up to the Kiwanis meeting, right? Like there's different levels of the impact of the world you're having. It's enough that you'll get in any given town in the United States, there's a dozen.
Right.
Maybe slightly more than that in bigger cities, but like they're not bowling down the door.
Right.
But because the level of interaction, there is a good there, but the level of good is distinct from, the Red Cross or something. And so even if you thought, hey, it's good to provide a place in which people can come and hang out together, the only other people who think that are people who are running businesses of which they want you to come buy coffee at their shop. It takes a lot to be the volunteer who just wants to support people coming together and singing Bon Jovi. That's a different ask. And so she said, There just weren't enough people. Making a congregation happen basically meant putting on a big show on a regular basis. Somebody needed to book bands, find speakers, set up chairs, pick up snacks. Anna Clayson, who was also involved with the New York chapter at the time, told me the same thing. The core group worked their hearts out, but it wasn't sustainable. And that's not foreign to church work, I guess. Like, go back to our previous point. Like, I think it is hard, especially when you're starting a church. You have to have a kind of, and Dan knows this way better than everybody else, but like you have a core group who's working hard in anticipation of providing a space where other people can come and be part of that community, and it does require a lot out of them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But but you have a sense that you're working for whatever your human effort is. There is a greater. It is of the greatest opportunity. Mm-hmm. You're doing the best you can, so that people could do something that could like radically and actually change the world around them. That's not this. It's missing that core element. And it takes, of all the things that I think about in our individual lives, which I might commit time to, it becomes very difficult to create a good space and raise money and find speakers so that Ted and his 10 friends can come listen to some guy that I could do a TED Talk online.
Right.
And, otherwise, like, again, sing Bon Jovi at home. Or at the bar. Do karaoke.
Right, I was going to say, you're probably going to have a lot more fun at the bar when you sing Bon Jovi. Just saying.
Well, they've taken some of the anchors of like some of the hardest part of like the business aspects of having to keep a church afloat, and they've taken the full responsibility out of that without the inertia that otherwise might come support things like that in a church where people are like willing to sacrifice so that you can have a place to serve food and donuts and a building so that people have a place to gather. Mm-hmm. And like again, just the moral imperative's not there. It says, let's see. Oh, yeah. Here we go. In New York and elsewhere, the basic mechanics of keeping a congregation running have proved difficult. To hire musicians and speakers, buy refreshments, and rent out a venue takes a lot of money. A traditional church has tithings, but leaders of secular communities have found that attendees are highly suspicious of any plea for donations. Many lapsed believers harbor strong negative associations with the collection plate. Yeah, again, I think that's a stretch. I think they're cheap, and I think they have a reason to be.
Yeah.
Because really what I'm saying is like, whoever leads it, right? Like, you're no longer talking about someone who has at least some sort of calling on their life to lead people spiritually. You're talking about a Walford. What was her first name? Hold on. Justina. You're talking about Justina, who goes, who now my faith is in her, and for no reason except for she's putting together a social gathering.
Right.
That, again, can be expressed itself in many different ways.
Yeah, great. She's a good party planner.
Yeah.
Give me money. Nah.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't think, especially in that situation, even if I wanted to give money, I don't trust that anybody else is going to give money.
Right.
For the same reasons that I might be hesitant. And so now, I'm not.
Now I'm just giving $10 to nothing.
That's right. I'll give to the church because it's good. Because it's long-term good. It's faithfulness. It's obedience. I'll do it. But like giving to this type of organization, now we're talking about a value exchange. Am I going to get something out of it worth my money?
Yeah.
And I don't think so.
What happens the one time I show up and the band wasn't that great?
Right.
I'm never giving money here again.
That's not worth paying for.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you're talking money approaching a tithe, that's a considerable amount of giving.
Yeah.
You might as well get like a box office at a major sporting event, and that becomes a community. You have all kinds of entertainment, and if it's a ball game, you might sing at the seventh inning or whenever they do the
stretch. Yeah.
I mean, you have all those elements, and you didn't have to buy the building. You're just renting the room,
right?
And you have some great community, and it's you have it all right there. If you're going to spend that kind of money,
right?
I mean, it's a lot less energy. You just show up and give the ticket to the dude, and go on.
A much better investment.
Yeah.
And again, absent the center of a religious figure of God or whatever, now you're just talking about investing in community. And Dan's right. There's wiser ways to do it. Okay, so let's keep going. It says, but and this goes to, I think, a question you asked, Boova. Beneath the surface were other rifts. Even within the community of non-believers were different groups with different priorities. Some ardent atheists wanted to rail against religion, for example, or have heated debates. But at Sunday Assembly, the point wasn't to put down faith or even to celebrate being faithless per se. The point being there was being there, just being there together.
I'm just imagining a celebration of not being faithful.
So here's
that doesn't sound like a fun time. What do we believe in? Nothing.
I'm committed to that.
I mean, a lot of you.
Preach, brother.
Here's the thing. Think about it from this way, though. I do believe that it is innate in us to want community like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and the
We're social beings.
So like there was someone I knew that had said, hey, I checked out I think it was like a Unitarian church, and my first reaction was, oh man, Unitarian church, but then I thought like I get it, because I think people are wired for that. I think we are wired for that. I think God has wired us for that, to be able to want to come together in groups. The picture is incomplete without God, though. And so, at the best, the Unitarian Church, just like these, are false promises. They're things. They're shadows. They're things that otherwise that make it look like they're going to do something, but ultimately can't produce the same, because they're missing Jesus. And so I remember thinking that I wanted to be careful about my reaction to the congregation itself, because I think that is actually innate. I think there's an element of God having brought our need to that, and people trying to fill those needs makes sense to me. Just like this woman trying to find this in these congregations makes sense to me. It's just that they will be shallow. They will not actually meet the need without God as the center, because it's through God that our community gets the proper definition.
Right.
I would think the people who probably support financially the most something like this is like your atheist who's angry at God. And the problem is, anger will not sustain movement. I mean, faith will, zeal, but anger, you can only go so far. You're like, okay.
How do you weather a storm in anger?
Yeah, right.
You don't.
You just get tired of it. I was like, okay, I just gave you $8,000 last year, and okay, I guess I'm not that angry anymore. Now I'm kind of angry at myself.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I could have done, or more. I mean, but yeah.
Well, and I suppose back to like, if I couple that with what they were talking about here, to the extent that I'm giving out of anger, and then the organization I'm giving to does not have the same level of passion as my anger,
now I'm leaving.
I'm supporting the wrong thing again.
Yeah, I'm no
I want
longer
to hear you
associated.
make fun of Jesus, not mention him.
That's
yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah. I'm not just anti from the perspective of I want to walk away. I'm anti from the perspective of I want to like outright bash, and then it not productive.
Like the atheist conference we went to a few years ago.
Yep.
Like dress up day was all priests and nuns, and it's like
we get it.
It wasn't a non-religious.
Exactly,
it was
right.
No, this has nothing to do with bashing the church. This is all about just understanding and celebrating science. And celebrating the understanding that things can be outside of faith.
No one's dressed up as Sir Isaac Newton.
Yeah,
not one of them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, right. That is completely right. Yeah, nobody showed up as their favorite geneticist. Oh, Gregor Mendel. Oh my gosh, that was wonderful. Like, that's never a thing that happened. Yeah, exactly. Everyone's like, oh, priest. Yeah. Oh,
Who are the DNA guys? Watson and Hook. Watson and what are the guys? The two guys who discovered the DNA.
Oh, I don't know. I know Gregor Mendel's the father of genetics, but I don't know those guys.
Crick. That's what it is. Crick.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, James Watson and Francis Crick.
I was up on the Mendel. I'm not that far into genetics.
Sorry. I had a...
Wait, did they head up the Human Genome Project then?
Or
did they just, or were was their work the one that based, or the Human Genome Project was?
Yeah, they discovered DNA in the 50s.
Really? Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, I think there was another guy who discovered it, like a Swiss dude in the
was their intern
mid 1800s, but like they got the popular distinction for having discovered DNA.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Like the structure.
Sorry, it popped in my mind because I expected a joint costume with two guys. Like there's 10 guys who showed up in the Crick and Watson outfits and were like, lame, look what we did. But you're right. No, priests and nuns, right? Yeah, nothing like having your definition of your life based upon what you're against. Congratulations.
Yeah. Not everyone can like operate like Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride. Spent 20 years just hating a guy, and that's the entire definition. It's like, oh crap, what do I do now?
Now what? Yeah.
So I suppose what's interesting though is if you look at these congregations, like it isn't like predominantly that they wanted to try to fill the gap that they felt was missing from the church and didn't want to do this. But it also attracts the type of folks who are like, yeah, I hate this, which I think is, I mean, the church attracts all kinds in the Christian church. It's not like you don't run into elements of this. It's just of people there for different reasons.
A little bit.
But it says, still in a city like New York, people have plenty of other options on a Sunday morning. Boot camps, Soul Cycle. What's that?
Soul Cycle?
Yeah.
Oh, I bet it's a cycling class.
Oh. Teach you how to bike on a stationary bike?
Well, but maybe like the whole concept of like we're going to go out and exercise, and that's going to help us like refine who we are.
Again, the central premise has a moral good. I feel
right,
like
exactly. Yeah, there's something that brings together a congregation of people that go to the same gym together.
It's got to be something.
That's better than just showing up to a place and singing the Bon Jovi.
Like we want to be like, hey, we want to be smarter. Like here's the thing.
Enlightenment.
It's a shallow understanding of the church because the things it attempts to copy are not the core premises of why the church meets. Like people don't listen to sermons to be smarter, right? Like, oh hey, I just want to hear like a TED Talk type of guy or physicist and blah blah blah. They're not. Yes, we're trying to gain knowledge, but that's the surface level of it. We gain knowledge in obedience,
right,
in application of what it looks like to be part of that. Yeah, like it's always 2 steps deeper than I think what the actions of these types of communities are trying to represent. And like I get it, but I think those are the core things that are missing. So it says you're competing with hundreds of other events at the same time. I mean, again, the church knows that too. Softball, soccer, getting enough people to show up felt impossible. The chapter officially. Hey, I've been having the hardest time. Like, so my kids, we're getting past the time of where we can play soccer. There was the Walnut Creek downtown had a soccer league, and so like of course they never schedule anything on Sundays, and so there was on Saturdays and stuff. And like they're getting to the age where like you're really running out of options. And I'm like, boy, I wish my kids could keep playing. Like they can't because I won't accept a Sunday option. But like it's we're reaching that time where like the stuff starts dropping off like flies, and you either got to play Sunday or you can't play. Let's see. So it said getting enough people to show up felt impossible. The chapter officially closed down in early 2016, 3 years after opening. So the question I did have, Dan, as I was thinking about this, is the statistics for churches starting isn't crazy better than this, though, is it?
Right. No. What is it? Is it 3 out of 4 fail in the first 5 years, something like that? It's
it's not great.
It's intense. Now some of that might come because, and maybe this has changed some, but it used to be the Baptists would start one every 3 days. They had like 6 people in it, and then after a while, 3-4 years later, they had 8, and
right.
They decide, well, I guess we can't afford this.
Right.
But that includes like more efforted churches as well.
Gotcha. Right. Right. Yeah, so I suppose like when they said this lasted 3 years, like okay, like I don't know, trying to fire up anything like that even in a Christian church sounds like it's not it's unique to be able to persist as a church planner.
Because even like in the church world, there's always 150 other churches you could go to.
Yeah, right.
And believe in the same God. You might have a slight different flavor, but if there's ever resistance or boy, this isn't giving me the passion I was hoping I would have.
Just go down the street.
We'll go down the street because they'll give them a try.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I suppose what's interesting here to that extent is that you might see, whereas Christian churches, people could go to different congregations. I think the assumption here is that when they close down, there aren't a ton of other non-believer type or secular churches like this.
To ride your bike on your own.
Yeah. You're going to the bar to the Zumba class, or it's bailing. It's not they're not transferring around and otherwise maintaining numbers. They're actually losing numbers. People are not committing to this. It says these issues didn't just affect the New York chapter. Sunday Assembly has reported significant loss in total attendees over the past few years, from about 5,000 monthly attendees in 2016 to about 3,500 in 2018. Oh, where are these survey people that never give me information that's useful to me? I'd like to see the growth of Christian church or Christianity or Protestant denominations or whatever against secular churches across the United States. It would be interesting to see, like, is it a cultural thing? Because we say, the churches are declining, and the assumption is it's in reaction to Christianity specifically. Is there a reaction of people's behavior as a whole against funeral things like this?
Societally, are we changing? Not just religiously.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, it tells you something slightly different. At least there's a different implication. Anyway, let's see. The number of chapters is down from 70 3 years ago to about 40 this year. Sustaining any kind of new congregation, indeed any new group activity at all, is hard work, but religious groups have more tradition, history, and institutional support behind them. And these factors can stand as a kind of safety net behind religious startups. So I think that's true from denominationals, but there's a finite amount of time in which you can float through church planting networks or non-denominational churches. They won't continue to dump money into something that won't sustain itself. And I suppose the proof of that is kind of what Dan was talking about. If we're 3 out of 4 don't make it 5 or 10 years, obviously we're willing to let them go.
Right, exactly.
It said, if Sunday Assembly was a Christian community that suddenly had brand recognition, a flock of pastors would come and bring all their skills and experience, said Sanderson Jones, one of the founders of Sunday Assembly. You could buy training videos. There'd be conferences. I think he's making the case that we don't know how to do this. But these are all different pre-existing structures. But without the structure, for secular congregations, there's no training videos. There are no church planting experts to help them grow roots. They're starting from scratch. I don't know. Does that sound right, Dan? You feel like for what they're trying to do, they're event planning, really.
Right.
Yeah.
They're saying there's no resources and how to make a good party happen every month?
Yeah, that's
not true at all.
Yeah, that's to say. I think we have to figure out what is really their goal, because I think it boils down to it's a business.
Yeah.
I really say that their business it's a failed business plan, because there's all kinds of opportunity to do the things they're talking about.
Yeah,
right.
Agreed. Even if they're not trying to turn a profit specifically, it is still a business, and you're absolutely right. How do we get people to show up to a place? There's no support on that. I doubt that. Very much so.
But the only thing you don't have is again kind of the deeper well thing, and
right.
You weren't going for that anyway.
Yeah, you're not being supported by anyone because you're not a cause.
Mm-hmm.
There's no cause for what you're doing. If you had some kind of moral cause, you could get someone who would be willing to give money towards what you're doing. Even if you want to make this work, make your rally monthly about some different disease.
Yeah,
make it something, because then you can contact some foundation or some group of people that have been affected by said disease, who will tell you how to throw it, who will host it, who will sponsor it, whatever. You want to get together and have cake and sing Bon Jovi? People will still show up, because everybody's going to want to feel good about showing up to the event. Same reason a bunch of people show up to a 5K for ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
It happens. People naturally go to that. There, I fixed your congregational problems.
I think if I were a non-believer and I look at, say, some of the television preachers who bring in millions of dollars, or the large churches and the budgets they have, and I would look at that and think, well, these people are just idiots giving their money to this, and these are just, hucksters that are getting the money out of them. We can create a legitimate business model based on what do these churches do, the things you mentioned, dynamic speakers and programs and blah, blah, blah. And they're just looking at it completely as a business thing and saying, well, we can duplicate that and not have this false, silly make-believe character,
right.
and people will love it.
If not improved upon it.
Just happens to be that when you miss the Spirit of God, there's something missing. So, yeah.
Just as an update, we're up to 26 comments on Troy's posts, and not a person has affirmed of not knowing Pat Sajak. Here we go. Seriously, Troy, who hasn't?
I say no one's gotten nasty yet, have they?
No, and if they do, I don't care.
Yeah.
No, it's relatively clean.
It'll turn about 1:30 this morning.
I don't remember not knowing who Pat Sajak is. Boy, Boova.
This is including my teachers are commenting on this, family, people I've worked with, my employees have commented, customers of mine have commented. Yeah, it's a large group of people. That's why I kind of want to do this on my Facebook.
You're not wrong. You're so wrong. So it says, even more challenging than the logistical barriers are the psychological ones. Linda Woodhead, scholar of religion and culture at Lancaster University in Great Britain, told me that structured communities just aren't easy to form. Meeting in a building with the same group of people every week, I don't think there's any natural need for that, she said. Now, hold on a minute. Take away the building aspect of it so that you can think of this more universally. But, people meeting weekly or with some regular cadence seems like a very normal thing to do.
Yeah.
Families do it. Friends do it. I think you could go to any culture in the world, whatever tribe that speared that poor John fellow who went to go take him Jesus. I bet they still meet on a weekly basis in some way or another.
Yeah, showing up on a Tuesday night for poker night. Everybody does that.
I don't. and there's not a natural need for that. I guess I disagree with that. I don't think that's true. I think people do have an inherent need for that type of thing. I don't think it is a forced behavior. I think it is a behavior that is otherwise natural, that has been presented with a number of individual competitions that I'm not sure are for our own benefit within our society, because we have the freedom to not do that. But like, think of normal things that happen as communities get together. They get rid of our technology and some of our improvements in humanity. People get together to share food,
right?
To contribute their part to whatever the society is doing. To talk about things that are going on, to meet about people that are sick, or to gather in either religious or just cultural ceremonies. Like, it's a pretty natural thing to do together.
If any argument in my mind could be made with that, would be societally, I could say that social media is kind of eroding our need for that kind of community to an extent, because people feel like they could be connected through the internet versus needing to actually show up to things. But I don't think that plays out perfectly, because I think people still do exactly like you're saying, show up and still have a meal once a week, and show up and still do, let's go to a baseball game once a month as friends to make sure that we still have that connection, stuff like that. Like, yeah. So
you said Woodhead believes that communities can be hugely important to people, of course, but you can't just meet for the sake of community itself. So I would agree with that. I think it's associated with something, because communities have inertia.
Right.
They're doing something.
Nobody wants to be just in a pond sitting in scum.
Right. They're like, hey, at least we're just standing around
streams
together.
Moving.
You need a very powerful, motivating element to keep people coming, something that attendees have in common. So what's interesting is, based upon what she said, though, the desire for not being affiliated. So I don't want to be affiliated with a god, but like, I want to grow in knowledge, and I want to be around people, and I want to join music, and I want some to do it weekly. Like, that seems like that would be in common, and yet it's not playing out. What's happened?
Yes.
You got somebody?
We got to know.
Unbelievable.
I will read it.
Why?
From a fella named Josh, whose wedding I'm officiating in 2 months, and now I'm doing it for free. After all these posts, I'm ashamed to say no. I looked him up, recognized him from Wheel of Fortune, but never knew his name. Bam! We finally got to know. Understandably, though, it's from someone from my graduating class, so maybe there's something about Southeast Polk in 2009 that messed up the Pat Sajak.
I mean, maybe. I think your level of vindication is not warranted. You're still
I'm still completely wrong. No, that was not vindication.
Okay.
That was just appreciation for community.
Okay.
Tying it back in.
I found some support.
Tying it back in.
Me and another dude. He said some congregations have that, so that the motivating element. The Salt Lake City. That Salt Lake City is home to one of the most successful Oasis chapters may not be a coincidence. Why not? What do you think the point is? Why is the secular Oasis, or the secular church community in Salt Lake City one of the most successful?
Well, in that specific place, I think that's running away from the church community.
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
That church community is,
yeah.
That community is very interesting and tends to breed a lot of dissension.
Yes, and here's what they said. That chapter has become an important hub for ex-Mormons. These members are bound by the shared experience of leaving the denomination they grew up in and feeling isolated in a hometown over which the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints looms large. For many nuns, however, their lack of religion is not a strong part of their identity. Alan Cooperman, director of religion research at Pew Research Center, says about 1/3 of nuns fall into the category of principled rejectors of organized religion or principled embracers of atheism or humanism, but the majority of nuns are just indifferent. On what basis would you pull them together, he asked. Being uninterested in something is about the least effective social glue, the dullest possible mobilizing cry, the weakest affinity principle that one can imagine.
Viva la revolution. We don't believe in anything.
Yeah, we're out.
We don't believe in that specifically. Let's meet.
Interesting, there's a psychologist, Ara Norazayan, who's studying religion at the University of British Columbia, told me that secular communities might have trouble getting members to inconvenience themselves, as people of faith routinely do for their congregations. He cited a study by Richard Sosis, an anthropologist, who studied 200 American communes founded in the 19th century. Sosis found that 39% of religious communes were still functioning 20 years after their start, but only 6% of secular communes were alive after the same amount of time. Is it because most secular communes are kind of those cultist ones that commit suicide? What are secular communes?
I don't know, but that isn't where my brain went first.
I just assumed that like Jim Jones and guys like that.
I was going to say David Koresh and all that stuff.
Well, that was religious.
Oh, that was religious, right?
Yeah. This is interesting though. He determined that a single variable was making the difference. So what do you think? What makes up the difference between the success of religious communes, 39%, versus the only 6% persistence of a secular commune after 20 years?
The secular are militias and they're shooting each other.
It says they're inherently violent.
I think it's the same argument we make in this entire argument or this entire article. The whole concept that like there's no social glue, to use their verbiage. There's nothing that's keeping them together. No moral guideline. No moral high ground that everyone has. No driving factor for unity.
So I think you're close. He said he determined that a single variable is making the difference: the number of sacrifices, such as giving up alcohol, following a dress code, or fasting, that each commune demanded of its members. That for religious communes, the more sacrifices demanded, the longer they lasted. However, this connection didn't hold for secular communes. The implication, he said, was that challenging rituals and taxing rules work only when they're part of something sacred, back to your point.
Yeah.
Once the veil of sacrality is removed, people no longer care to commit to things that demand their time and dedication. I don't want to give my money. I don't want to sacrifice for it. I don't want to spend 3 years for people who don't want to commit to it. There's no sense of higher purpose to it. If it's come and go as you wish, that's not going to work. Even if secular congregations could create a sense of the sacred, they tend to attract people who are explicitly looking for community without costly rituals, one that lets you do what you want. And so ultimately, secular communities also have a focused sense of self, right? So like to the extent that I am willing to be here because I am able to be myself without otherwise submitting to some mores or cultural aspects of the group, then you have no sense of shared bond, except for the fact that we all just want to be who we want to be.
Right.
And to the extent that something starts to become a shared bond but starts to change your identity, you bail because you no longer get to be who you are. Which is an interesting thing because, like, as a society, like that is kind of a movement in how we think of ourselves. Is that like the ultimate realization or self-actualization is realizing who the true me is and being true to that. But that almost that often, I would say, separates us from communal bonds, things that like types of rituals or things that we voluntarily change about ourselves and things that we do, say, whatever, so that we fit in with the community. Like with the rejection of that, you lose the value or the sense of what comes with a community anyway. Unless you are a commune of specifically of individuals. That is the presiding thing, is not that there's anything alike about you. It's that you're intentionally associating with each other as unique individuals, and your uniqueness is the common denominator, which I think is not sustainable, right? Because there is something about community, and to the extent that you don't allow communities to shape you, to allow yourself to be changed. Even think of something basic as, hey, I hang around people with strong marriages to otherwise help shape your behavior on how you look or think about marriage or whatever. To the extent to say, no, I reject that because I am who I am, and like the strength or the bonds that are built up through communities don't actually occur. And so I think they're just they can start up, but ultimately the elevation of self will carry people away from it. Because at some point or another, communities ask something of each other of a blending, and to the extent that you're not willing to blend, your communities won't actually.
Right. You think so? To more to the point of the sacrificial thing being a glue for them. I think that's the concept. Like, do you think sociologically it's because people band together when they feel like they're, for lack of a better term, suffering together? Like, sacrificing something for the good of, from the religious standpoint, you're sacrificing something because it's abstaining from sin or abstaining from an issue because that's what we're meant to do. We're called to being better in the Christian church. Like, sociologically, I think that people are banding together because of the fact that, like, in suffering you find companionship, and in suffering, especially mutual suffering that may not have the same face, but it has the same body, if you will. We may not all be giving up alcohol, but we're all giving up something. That kind of drives people together because it's natural empathy. It is, I understand your sacrifice and the suffering, if you have, because I too am doing that. I am also giving something up. I am giving up, drinking. You're giving up pornography. You're giving up this and all this different stuff. It's a call to to communal empathy.
Yes, and I think that's think of the strong bonds in like conceived marginalized communities. Right.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I was saying that too.
Right. So that's where those come from. Is like, hey, we are all equally being mistreated in some form or another, and so we are bound by that experience.
Yep.
It is so like you have bonds that are tied to what we think or how we think or belief systems that we have, and you have bonds that are tied by events. Think of high school reunions, or like think we are our community, or our sense of community is based upon a shared circumstance, or a shared way of being either treated by the world or a shared place in the world or whatever that is. Or even think of like trade guilds, or like shared work.
Yeah, I was gonna say everybody who hates their boss.
Yeah.
It's the crew of cooks that hate the chef.
So, and this is where social media has permitted us a means to hyper specialize in those types of things and very much niche out. Like our group is disenfranchised cooks who are also left-handed and bike to work, and like that is a unique community.
It's not hyper specific at all.
The problem is that because think of those, and you can debate me on the reality of a group like that, but like the niches of those things exist. It becomes very easy to fall out of the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You may always remain left-handed, but maybe you find a good boss. And now what? You lost your community because the thing that brought you together went away. And that's the thing is, as I suppose that's true for the church too, because you can walk away and say, look, I don't love or follow Jesus anymore. And so yes, you've lost the notion of that community. But like the fickle nature of who we consider part of our community, who we spend time with, what we get our sense of identity from, I think is becoming harder because we know more. We've been taught to categorize ourselves in certain ways, and put each other in buckets, and that say this will be our community because these people are like this, are in this bucket. And the Christian community, besides the fact that we otherwise agree that Yahweh is King, is not otherwise our the definitives start to go away, right? Like it's agnostic of skin color and cultural background and money and whatever, like all those other things that separate people. I don't know. And so it's interesting. So they said, while costly sacrifice might not be present in these communities and they may be suffering for that reason, they have other tools in their toolkit. So things that might otherwise resurrect this type of behavior. Mm-hmm. They already have collective singing and live music, for example, which sets meetings apart from everyday experiences. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, so in lieu of a sacrificial nature that brings us together, hey, we dance and sing.
Hey, now.
I'm sorry. I would not show up to a church if the only promise was that we're going to sing together.
When we first started Pathway, there was a small group I had meeting together, and we weren't suffering. And I literally was thinking, I need them to suffer, right? To bring them together for that and so small group, I would pull out my guitar and sing these songs, right? We would sing songs, and everybody hated it, and I acted like it was the most serious thing, like
I love that.
And about 6 months in, I finally said, "You guys done with this?" They were like, "Please!" And it was the greatest conversation, but it drew them together.
Be done with dance singing?
I mean, no, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. It totally did exactly what I wanted it to do.
That's awesome.
It's interesting that was your motive.
Does
that have
Sean Ingle
I was going to say, does that have anything to do with my parents?
Rick and April Babcock.
Oh man, that's great. That is
the Rockwells.
I'm super excited to hear about that 14 years after the fact.
Yeah. It was. They still will talk about. I just lost the name of the song. Sanctus. Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Oh man,
it was all
awesome.
Old school '90s.
These people have to suffer. Let me bring my music.
I can't punch them, but I can make them sing.
Let me bring people together.
Dan, you were the social glue.
I tell you, there's a reason I do just about everything I do. I usually don't tell anybody.
That's wonderful.
And if you ask me, I'll deny it.
Yeah, exactly. No, that never happened.
There's always
what
a
are you
reason.
talking about? I loved that singing. Oh, man, Dan, that's great.
Hey, Boova, think of that. Anytime you ever look at Dan, just know he's plotting something.
Right, exactly.
I am.
If I'm ever listening to Dan sing, I wonder if he thinks I need to suffer.
He's doing it.
Oh, man, I feel social glue forming. What is happening right now?
Oh.
I hate this, Dan. You're a genius.
I feel closer to God than ever.
Oh man, this is great. Deny myself. Come to the Lord.
They are. So anyway, you have collective singing and live.
Sorry,
live
I
music,
distracted you.
which sets meetings apart from everyday experiences.
What?
I don't.
That's
Again,
a stretch.
yeah, I don't know that that's a. I mean, it is a bond, but it is momentary. And I can't imagine, like, for all the trouble that you have in churches of trying to figure out the types of songs to sing so that people are okay. You open that playbook to friggin' every song that's been popular over the last 60 years. I mean, I can't imagine that you're not going to find people who otherwise hate the tunes that are going on in your secular community.
Yeah, that's saying that people are going to show up to a wedding and the music is the reason they're showing up to the wedding. Yeah, people jump and dance and have fun at a reception. I know that. I'm a wedding DJ.
Yeah.
But they're not there for the music. That's just an added bonus to the fact that they're there to celebrate the union of friends or family members.
Yeah. He says he believes that they can and will adapt over time, evolving into something closer to conventional religion, even if no deities are involved. Secular congregations can become as meaningful as religious ones, he said, but there has to be a sense of transcendence. Yes.
Yeah.
Peyote. He means pot.
I don't.
There has to be marijuana.
I don't believe that's the argument that's being made right now,
Craig Gross from the Triple X Church says, yes, if you would only introduce the Panama Red.
The Christian cannabis.
The Panama Red.
He says, transcendence is what gives the community a higher level of meaning than going to Johnny's Little League game. Again, I think that overcranks on. I suppose it depends what he's getting at with transcendence, but like communities have been getting together for a very long time. It doesn't have to be a hyper spiritual event. I guess.
I mean, I can understand that, like, people coming together and a social congregation, secular in nature. I'm sure that conversations are going to start happening where people are going to start talking about moral similarities they may have.
Ooh, yeah.
And like things that they're passionate about. And then that becomes, well, hey, if we're going to be here anyway, we might as well start either advancing our congregation by having these conversations or even working towards the betterment of certain situations.
Yep.
Like people showing up to a Kiwanis. People showing up for a reason. There's social good to be done. You know, we're sponsoring an orphanage or we're doing this or something like that. Like there is a natural outpouring of, hey, we're coming together, we might as well be helping. No one's going to show up to a party once a month for the rest of their life just to party for no other reason.
Yeah.
There's going to be similarities they find.
It says it might mean, the transcendence, it might mean developing more rituals or sharing more stories. Here's the thing, like there is a commonality, like common stories, common sets of beliefs, common understanding of how to look at the world. Those are inherent things that otherwise come with being in a community. And there might be things that you learn, but they flow from. Here's the thing: is that they flow from Christianity, or even take like Hinduism or something, right? Like they flow from a sense of something being greater than any individual person.
Yeah.
The problem with the secular community trying to mimic that is that at its core, they all come from an individual person. Like no one is fooled. This was Ted's idea.
Right.
Ted said we should start singing Guns N' Roses. And you're like, okay, Ted, but I don't like Guns N' Roses. And why would I? Like, I might have to submit to the fact that like, if God has a way of thinking about something, we all implicitly agree that God is higher than me, and so I have something to submit to. I have no reason to submit to God.
Right, exactly,
not.
yeah.
Because even in the music, you'll have different in the church. You'll have different styles of music people prefer. But they will yield their preferences, thinking, well, the younger generation likes this.
Oh, right, yeah.
And we want them to know Jesus, or the older generation likes this. We want them to,
there's a top of the pyramid there.
Yeah, but if it's a purely selfish thing, it's like, well, I don't like this. I'm going somewhere else.
I'm here for my personal benefit.
For some reason, the only thing I can think of right now is the Flintstones with what is it, the Royal Order of the Water Buffaloes, the Order of the Water Buffaloes, with the blue hat and the horns. I don't know why that is the only thing that keeps popping up in my head. Is Fred Flintstone wearing that blue hat with the star and moon? Sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, that reminds me of like even Masons.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was at the
100%.
Zagay Zig Shrink the other night. Shrine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was I don't get that whole thing.
No, I'm almost intimidated to ask. Like there's so many intricacies to it, and when I find out someone is a Freemason, I'm just like, oh, cool.
So I grew up with a guy, and so we actually had a conversation with a friend of mine who I think he's the head of the thing. of a local one,
local chapter,
and we were talking about similar things about trying to encourage people to otherwise be part of communal activities that call into service, express what you believe in ways that you serve. And so there were consistent things across those two types of organizations, which I think speak to the persistence of both of those things. There was a center to them. They're not the same type of center, but like it becomes Freemason. If you think of Masons lodges and things like that, or having some akin to Kiwanis and stuff like there is a moral center. There's a core to it that says we're in service of something. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting what they're talking about is developing more rituals and sharing more stories. That's consistent across these types of organizations. It says it might mean that ideals they already espouse, such as helping others or finding wonder in nature, get elevated to a sacred level. Again, the problem becomes humans still choose those things. One guy loves the mountains, and he's like, hey, you know what? As a group, we're gonna love the mountains. And then Shannon in the back goes, you know what? I don't dig on mountains.
Right.
Yeah.
I worship raindrops. And then what are you gonna do? We don't agree on the thing. Mm-hmm. And then you end up in micro niche groups like here's the mountain folks and here's the raindroplet people, and I think it's a lot harder. And people would say religion is then false. Isn't it convenient that everyone kind of chucks their brain at the door and has to give up those types of preferences to kind of submit to this thing of God? I'm like, well, as a controlling thing, I suppose you could look at it that way.
Absolutely.
But the question is, if it's true, though, if it does come from a higher authority who would know better than me, then submitting to it is not unreasonable at all. It's completely reasonable.
Just because the mechanism works doesn't mean that it's wrong.
That's right. Like effectiveness is not. It's the only time.
Effectiveness is inherently evil.
That's
only
right.
in the church.
That's right.
Only in the church.
That's right. Hey,
oh man, they're effective. Well, isn't that convenient to be a deal for God? It's like, well, yeah, it is. It's effectiveness. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
I had the same conversation with someone who was talking about. Well, isn't it convenient that the church just happened to exclude all these letters and books into the Bible that otherwise called it into question, like that didn't say the same things everything else said? I was like, no, that's exactly how it should work.
That's effective to make a cohesive work of books.
Hey, this thing's a lie. Let's not include it. Exactly. I see the evil you've propagated.
Right, how dare you throw out those outliers? Yeah, it's because they weren't true.
That's what
the variables were incorrect for our data.
That was the end result of the conversation, which is that like the thing. If you were to do it and do it right, and it's going to look exactly like the accusation that it is evilly manipulated, to what end can I even satisfy this conversation?
Right, exactly.
Right, I can't do anything about it. Anyway, this is end of the article. Secular community organizers are trying their hardest every day to prove that Sosis is right, that their non-religious congregations can provide the same fulfillment as religious ones. Some have spent time researching what makes a lasting religious community, hoping to reverse engineer its machinery for secular use. Sunday Assemblies, Sanderson Jones, for example, has developed a framework of 5 core components in any congregation. Here we go.
All right.
Community life, transformational gatherings, personal growth, helping others, changing the world.
Yeah.
Says this may sound like clumsy marketing speak. It can feel awkward to watch a so-called atheist church work out its evangelization strategy in real time. Then again, and here's the thing. I think you've separated, this article has separated itself too far from the normal church world. We are talking about people who are imperfect people trying to follow a perfect God. This sense of awkwardness and not quite getting it right or whatever, I think exists in a lot of church
that's there too.
Yeah, we're like, we're doing our best here, humanizing what it looks like to follow a creator God. So, I mean, you're not the only one with these kind of challenges. It says, then again, traditional religious groups have spent hundreds of thousands of years figuring out how to get people in the door. Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of years?
Hundreds of thousands of years? What? That's just poorly written.
Well, they've done their research.
Yeah, that's in fact, even
I've been doing this since the Mesozoic era.
I don't mean to go, hyper new or anything, but even 2 Corinthians has a whole section on how to get people in the door. What the heck? I feel like you've not taken in any of the religious texts that I'm familiar with.
Oh man, hundreds of thousands of years.
Drink my blood. Let's see who stays. Anyway, then again, traditional religious groups spent hundreds of thousands of years figuring out how to get people in the door. We just aren't seeing the shaky early experiments happen in front of us. Again, I'm not sure this. Now, here I'm going to make 2 things. Things are going to sound converse. I think the things in supporting this, I think the things that worked, say, 2,000 years ago or 8,000 years ago, work today, pointing people to the true God. I think they work. So it's going to sound like I'm agreeing with them. But then again, like the human means of which you otherwise get people's attention and what holds their attention long enough for them to take in something true are certainly not the same from, say, 2,000 years ago, 200 years ago, 200 days ago.
I was going to say, yeah.
Let alone 100,000 years ago.
Hundreds of thousands of years.
Let's see. Some leaders of a Sunday assembly in Oasis told me they're trying to make those weekly meetings so interesting, so entertaining, so powerful that people will keep showing up, and that's where they completely lost me. And I felt some sense of where the church can make the same mistake. Because, again, the thing that I do believe is the same over time is through whatever means you're introducing people to the true God. To the extent that your focus, your primary mechanism is to make interesting, entertaining, and powerful meetings that are absence of people meeting the true God, they will otherwise render.
Yeah.
And that's true in the church, and it's true in the Sunday secular congregation. And so it's interesting that the things that we are talking about on the right ways to approach people's humanity and can hold and keep their attention to say something true are the same things that the secular church community is looking at and going, heck yeah, let's embrace that. It's working for the church.
Right, exactly.
And the church is asking, this is working. Is it doing what we want it to do? And some means yes, and some means it's not. We're having a refining conversation. They're jumping in full hog into the deep end. He says the quality of the content is what keeps people coming back. I don't know. There's plenty of churches knocking out like true quality content. People will leave in the face of quality content that they do not personally like. And that, frankly, I think seems like 10 times the risk in a secular church. Again, because you're talking about folks who are more likely to be like, I believe what I believe, and so like I don't really need you telling me what to believe. And so if you say things that I don't like, I won't come back.
Yeah, you're fishing, and your only draw is to make sure the lure is shiny.
Yeah, we can share an ale over your troubles in this area, but the quality of content isn't necessarily what keeps people coming back. And I would say to the extent that it is, you have just started a series of event planning, of which you are ill prepared, poor fundraising, and are in for a terrible world of heartache. This doesn't you may be calling it a church community, but you're an event planner,
right? Yep.
And so yeah, it's weird. That really, I think the way to sum this up, then the way to rescue these things is at least for if the core goal is to say how do these things sustain, regardless of what I think about the fact that they're happening. But if you wanted to sustain an organization, it sounds like your best option is to come up with a focused moral center. Even if it expresses itself as simply, look, our job is that we want to help blind people. Mm-hmm. Even if that's your core. People can get around that.
Yeah, people will show up to that.
Yeah.
100%.
Yep. Let's see if it... Oh, shoot. For those who stick... let's follow up with Justina. Justina Walford, for her part, has been without a community since the New York Sunday Assembly closed down. After relocation to Dallas, she tried out a Southern Baptist church near her home, and she loved it. She loved the services, the singing, the people, but the more enmeshed she became, the guiltier she felt about the secret she was carrying. She didn't believe in God, so she stopped showing up. Sometimes she thinks about starting a Sunday Assembly chapter in Dallas, but the idea is daunting. She knows now how much work it is and how much it hurts when things fall apart. For those who stick with Sunday Assembly or Oasis, the challenge now is to make the community last beyond their own generation and to find new congregants as the number of non-believers grows. Organizers hope that the other adults will see how wonderful it is to be accepted and accepting, to sing Bon Jovi badly in an abandoned church. Oh, they're doing it in a church building. I mean, I don't care, but I do care. Or hear a talk about quantum physics in a local Y with other like-minded and familiar people. And that, having had these experiences, they'll keep showing up.
Hold up. One of the ways that they were bringing people in were talks about quantum physics?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, don't get me wrong. I actually dig on that stuff, and it's pretty cool when you break that stuff down and hear someone who's passionate about quantum physics talk about it. But, I'm weird, though, and am currently wearing a Star Wars shirt. So, I can't imagine there's that many people that are like, hey, man, you know what's happening this week? We're going to go talk about quantum physics.
Yeah.
Ben, has that ever attracted you to show up to a group?
No, here's the deal. I don't like groups. And so you might say, here's a video about quantum physics. And I'm like, I might check that out. As a matter of fact, I started randomly reading a calculus textbook that I found online that was really quite good. But I mean, if you said, here's a community of people talking about calculus, I'd be like, no, I will not be there.
Yeah, you are like a lot.
The Lord Jesus is the only one, frankly, that has compelled me into any sense of community. I would hermit myself with the option.
That's the only way it works. Jesus is the only one who brings the introverts to the community.
He's done it. Okay. Anyway, that was it. That was a long one. Sorry. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I think if we make a mistake though if we don't recognize that there are sections when we see those articles about the nuns and whatever, NONES, that have a desire that I believe is innate for community. Somehow they've either not misunderstood or been misrepresented by or not understanding Jesus. Like, to have so want the thing that exists as it does because of Jesus, how could I possibly look and say that Jesus is or real or true? Like the nature of the community around it at least somewhat implies that there is something there. Although you could make that same case for every other religion that isn't Christianity. It implies that there's something there. So yeah, that doesn't hold. I take that back. Okay. All right, Boova, you had a day.
Oh man, do we have time?
Yeah, we got time.
All right. Yeah, I really did have quite a bit of a day today. It's actually been a couple of days running that I've been having some issues, and so people who've listened to the show for a long time probably at least some semblance or a bit of this story. But so the last couple of days have been kind of rough for me, and it kind of came to a head in the last, I'd say, 15 hours. So tomorrow's my birthday, and I kind of dread that day, to be honest. So I lost my parents about a decade ago. Lost my dad when I was 18. Lost my mom when I was 19. And that was kind of the beginning of it. I lost my uncle a couple years after that. I was very close with, and actually I shared a birthday with. And so it's his birthday now too. And this is, I think, the sixth or seventh one since he's passed away. And then, a couple years after that, my grandmother passed away. And so the majority of my father's side of the family has all passed away. And like, I've lost a lot of people. And I don't say that to give a woe is me. It just kind of gives context here. And so, this some things are happening in my life that I'm having to make a lot of major changes. And, I've been a big guy my whole life, and I've struggled with, addiction to food, and I've struggled with, being overweight. I've lost hundreds of pounds from my peak weight, but I'm still not healthy, and I still have a lot of struggles with that and have a lot of issues. And within the last week, I've actually I hit a low point last week, and I had to go to the hospital. And I was in the hospital, and I'm a type 2 diabetic, and my blood sugar was over 400, and so I went to the hospital, and took my blood sugar, gave me some insulin, and there was some scare about diabetic ketoacidosis, which is basically what happens is your blood sugar is so high, your kidneys and your lungs stop functioning properly. So your kidneys actually stop filtering through most of the liquids in your body and getting rid of the liquids in your body. And so your body stops expelling the acid that builds up the natural way it's supposed to through your renal system. And so basically they took my blood and there was acidosis in it, which means that there's acid buildup. And so that affects things very quickly. And so that's kind of the step before going into a coma when you're a diabetic, is diabetic ketoacidosis, or what they call DKA. And so I've been a diabetic, at least diagnosed, for about 5 years now, 6 years maybe. Mm-hmm. And I've never come that far into it. I've never tested positive for any kind of acidosis, and it was scary. And so that led me to this crisis where I was like, I need to start losing weight and, need to get back on the horse and start doing this stuff. And so I started, I decided I was actually going to fast last Wednesday when I got back from the hospital, and it went pretty well. And, that kind of led up to this thought process that I've been running into recently that, I need to start giving things to God more and stop fighting the way that I'm fighting. Right? Like, my weight loss has always been a thing that I've fought for. I've been the one on the front lines, whether that's decisions that I've made to get healthier, whether it's I've done a diet plan that was fairly strict, or whether I started working out or built some kind of health regimen that was to make me lose weight. And I've always failed. Every single time I failed. And even if it was under some length of success, whether it was I'd lost a couple 100 pounds, like I had just said, or I would go a couple weeks without eating like crazy, or no binging or anything like that, it always ended in some amount of failure. And so this last week has been really rough for me because I decided to do a Daniel fast, and it's kind of from the scripture in Daniel 3 and Daniel 10. Not kind of, it is exactly from there. And so the scripture in Daniel 10 talks about eliminating delicacies and meat, and I drank no wine, is what he says. And so there's a lot of different interpretations on what that means, and you can break down the Hebrew of what delicacies means and things like that. But a lot of people break it down to be kind of like a vegan diet, where you kick away any animal products, no meats, no animal products like dairy or anything like that. You're eating basically vegetables, fruits, grains, things like that, and that's important. Most people kick out sweets of some kind, so they don't eat candy, even though there's no animal proteins in most of that, and they kick out caffeine and stuff like that. I've decided to do a fairly strict version where I basically break out everything besides legumes, vegetables, fruits, and nuts and stuff like that. Pretty much all I eat. And so all that to say, within the last 12 to 15 hours, I'm not sleeping very well, and I didn't really sleep last night, and so I woke up today about 5 hours after I planned on it. Couldn't sleep last night, got to bed around 6:30 in the morning, and then finally fell asleep and woke back up, and I was just hitting really, really low. Like, I just woke up, just depressed. And I go to a counselor for my depression and things like that, and I've been diagnosed with PTSD because of my mom actually committed suicide and attempted pretty much through the majority of my the latter half of my childhood, and losing my dad and losing a lot of other people. So like I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I've been diagnosed with severe depressive disorder, and I have anxiety and things like that. And so I've been battling those fairly hard recently, and I've been fairly successful, but sometimes I hit a low, and today was probably one of the worst lows I've hit in a very, very long time. And so I just woke up really late, and I had no desire to get out of bed, and was just laying there just hurt and sad, and like I have this insane fear of failure that irrationally stems from a lot of personal problems that I have. Like I was talking to Ben about this before the show, and I'll share a small portion of it, not all of it. But like I have a fear of failure because of the fact that like I equate all of the loss that's happened in my life irrationally to be some sort of failure on my part. And so like my mom attempted suicide first when I was 11 years old. And I had to save her. I had to pick her up out of her bed. She had just taken a bottle of pills and drank a bottle of vodka. I was 11 years old, and I picked my mom and carried her into the bathroom and woke her up and called 911 and had to get them to come and basically save her life and pump her stomach and stuff. And it just kept happening. Every 6 to 8 months, like clockwork, my mom would start drinking again and then attempt suicide again. And for 8 years of my life, that was it. And so basically what's happened in my brain is this thought process that if I wouldn't have failed so hard at being a son, my mom would have wanted to stay around. And that's irrational, and it's not true. And I won't go in depth into that. My mother was a great mother, and she did not make me feel inadequate as a son, but it just, that's how it happened. And losing my dad, my thought process in a brain that's kind of riddled with trauma, I think to myself, if I just would have tried harder with him, and if I would have lost weight with him, then he wouldn't have had a heart attack and died when I was 18, which is untrue, but it's how I've rationalized. And so that's led up to this insane and built-up fear of loss and failure in my life. And so I woke up this morning in this thought process that I was just ready to fail at this thought and just ready to fail at this Daniel fast. And my thought process was, if I quit, I'm exercising some semblance of control. If I just quit, there's control in quitting. I'm making a conscious decision to be done. If I fail, there's fear in that because there's letdowns to it. I'm letting myself down. That means I actually attempted and wasn't good enough. Whereas if I quit, it has nothing to do with me being good enough. I can rationalize it as, no, I made the choice to quit, right? And so I woke up feeling that way, and I was feeling rough, and like it came to a head that I was seriously, and I'm trying to battle embarrassment but also be open about this. I was literally laying in bed, and I was clutching my pillow, and I was bawling. I mean, I was in serious tears, and like it was dripping off of my face. I was crying so hard, and I could barely speak. I couldn't breathe, and it was it was the, for lack of a better term, weakest and most depressed I've felt in years. And it was horrifying. And I was scared. And I literally, I feel like I seriously regressed to when I was 11. And like that, I had the fear of a child in my brain, and it was crazy. And so I share all of this to say that this beautiful thing has happened to me recently. And I was reminded of it today, and it hit me really hard. And within the last week, I've read this story probably 10 times, but when I was thinking about how I was going to battle this and start losing weight again and get better and things like that, interestingly enough, God led me to the story of Gideon. And in Gideon, the concept that after the fleece and that part of the story, it goes to he's battling the Midianites and the Amalekites, and then a couple of other armies that are banded against Israel. And like they're innumerable. They show up, and the thing is, they're like locusts. And there are so many of them, they descend upon the crops and upon the livestock of the Israelites, and they just can't be counted. There's that many. And so God shows up to Gideon, or sends an angel to speak to Gideon and say, you will be the one to deliver the Israelites from this army. And Gideon goes through the fleece and says, are you sure it's me, God? If it's truly you, let the fleece be damp and everything else be dry. And then, okay, you did that, but if it's really you, let everything else be damp and the fleece be dry. And then that shows up. God calls him. And so he shows up. And he shows up with 32,000 soldiers. And God looks at this group of soldiers and says, there's too many. There's too many. And Gideon's kind of just sitting there like, wait, what? What do you mean there's too many? This 32,000, we're going against armies that are innumerable. God, this is not too many. And God responds with, if you go with too many, basically, the boast will be for Israel. It won't be for me. The win will go to you and not to me if you show up with so many soldiers. And so he says, basically just take a poll of who wants to be here and who wants to go. And so they lose like 20,000 soldiers doing that. And there's still 12,000 soldiers or so. And so God says, it's still too many. There's still too many soldiers. It will still be to your boast and not to mine. Lead them to the water. Have them drink. Separate those that lap up water like a dog with those that kneel to drink. And so he does that. And there were only about 300 that lapped up water like a dog. And God says, send them.
I think that's funny, by the way. He chose the dog lappers.
Oh, totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a certain desperation for the water that happens when you're a dog lapper.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's not about presenting yourself and kneeling and sipping from your hand.
There's no couth.
Exactly. You drop and you drink like a dog. You are thirsty. And God says, take the 300 there and go to the Midianites, and that will be who you battle with. And so it's this beautiful story of God's identity to Gideon, and he's letting him know the numbers are not important to me. That is not how I battle. It does not matter if they're innumerable. It doesn't matter how many there are. I am your God. I am Yahweh. I am your Father. I am is the one who sent you. You will take the 300, and I promise you, you will not die. That's exactly what he says to him. He promises him that he will not die. He is saying that he is his safety. And Gideon responds by building an altar and saying, God is my peace. And that's so important there. And so I've taken that story and I've run with it, because for years I have failed at this. For years I have failed at being good enough to battle my addictions, to battle my depression, to battle my circumstances. I am not good enough to do it. I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the right battle, right? And God showed up and showed off and said to me, dude, you don't need to be the one that fights. Stop fighting. You are not the warrior in this. I am. You are not the fighter in this. I am. You cannot defeat it, but guess who can? And it was this beautiful moment of realization to where I was not trusting God with something that I thought had more power over me than he had power over it. And that hit me hard today, because that's exactly how I woke up. I woke up thinking, God, you are not strong enough to beat this. You are not trustworthy enough for me to give in to you. You are not faithful enough to keep your promises. And it was a low point for me. And I was in desperation. I was crying for my life. My heart was broken. And in this moment, I realized, I was like, I'm sitting here fearing failure towards a God that I feel like I should be running to right now, but I'm not. And my failure says, run further. But the truth says, no. Just because your faith is failing does not mean God is. Just because your trust in him is failing does not mean God is failing. He is your rock. He is your peace. Run to him even in your failure, and run to him even in your heartache. He is holding his arms wide open for you to run back to him. And so in this primal moment, I decided that I was either going to do one of two things. I was going to quit, and I was going to run, and I was going to fail and fail epically. And when I fail in this stuff, it is rough. I will be gone for months. People will not speak to me. My shame will take me captive and hold me in shackles. Or I have the choice to run to my Father, the creator of this universe, and say, Dad, I am not strong enough and I can't fight. I need you to go fight for me. And that's exactly what I did. And I started crying out to God and telling him, Father, I'm not strong enough for this. I'm not good enough for this. I do not trust you in this. Help my unbelief. Father, I need you to show up right now and shatter my enemies. I mean, psalmist style. I need them under your feet. You trample my fear right now. You trample my inadequacy, and you trample my faithlessness, and I need you to take charge of my heart and run to that. And it was one of the most liberating moments of my entire life when I realized there is not a single thing in my life that is an ailment, that is a hurt, that is a sin, that is a deprivation of my actual nature as a son of Christ, that God is not strong enough to trample, and that he is not faithful enough to take care of and handle. And I've never given that to him like I did today. And you know what I did today? You know what I did all day today? I laid in bed, and I prayed about it, and I talked to him about it. And I didn't binge eat for the first time in my life when it came to those depressive moments. I didn't run to go crazy. I decided that my binging was a spoonful of peanut butter, and I decided to make bread. That's ridiculous. I decided to knead bread with my hands and to recognize that he is my sustenance and he keeps me going. And he's the reason for living. He is my Father and he is my King. He is faithful and he is my peace. And just like Gideon, I didn't need 32,000 to go and battle the Midianites. I just needed God on my side and his promises to hold on to in trust and in faith. And I know that I'm not done or out of the weeds, but I can promise you I saw a glimpse of my triumphant King Father today, and it was beautiful.
It was a very, we kind of talked about this a little bit. Like there's aspects of that are very unique to you, and then I think there are aspects of that like everybody goes through. Everybody has moments of up against something or other, of which they have attempted on their own to defeat,
right? And
have found that it defeats them time and time
Absolutely,
again.
Yeah.
And humanity, the humanity within it says, I need to be stronger. I need to fight harder. This is a test of who I am as a person,
right?
When at its core, like as we look at things rightly, it is often a test of our understanding of the faithfulness of God and our willingness to submit to it.
Yeah.
And there's not magic in it. And I think this is where people struggle. Boova, tell me if I'm wrong, but this is where we struggle. Was like the phrase "give it to God" is difficult for people because like they don't know what to do. Like, what does it mean to give it to God? Because if I say, okay, I give this to God, and I'm still sitting in my bed grabbing my pillow,
right? Exactly.
Now what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like, I gave it to the Lord, and He failed me because I'm still hugging pillow.
Right. Yeah. We do not have an understandable measure of success.
And is it because as part of that, as I think through your day, is a misunderstanding of success,
yeah, absolutely.
A misunderstanding of what it is to conquer, to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I was still clutching my pillow in tears after I cried out to the Lord. His help for me was not to cure me immediately. Like, my expectation was not for God to be my genie, which I think is where we miss the intention of it a lot. I think the whole concept of the give it to God is this thought process that, oh, God's powerful enough, therefore he will make it all nothing. All of it will go away. I won't remember my parents. I won't remember my fear of failure, anything like that. And it's wrong. God doesn't promise that. There's no promise ever that God is just going to eliminate all ailments here. That doesn't happen.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate, because I think that's where a lot of people do lose faith, is when we have expectations for what his power does, Not is, but does. We run into problems. It's the same reason why most people are afraid of praying for healing. Legitimate healing. Not just, oh, Lord, I hope you help the person that has cancer. But no, God, you control their cells. You control the universe, and all creation cries out to you. If you want to eliminate cancerous cells, there will not be a trace left. That is powerful healing. And we run into that because people think that when praying for that, God failed if that person isn't healed. God failed if the lame don't walk. God failed if the deaf don't hear. God failed if the blind don't see. But that's not true, because when you truthfully pray for that stuff, you realize the prayer isn't in the outcome. The prayer isn't in the solution. The prayer is in giving up all expectations and giving into the will of the Creator. If it's in God's will that He makes the lame walk, they will walk. It will happen. If the will of the Creator is in the fact that, yeah, I may still be sad about a lot of my situations, but I didn't fail today because I recognize that God is my success, and my Father is where strength comes from, and my Father is where peace comes from. If I look at Him like a genie, He failed me today. But if I look at Him like the bread of my life and the sustenance of the next day that I have, today was a beautiful success. It was a beautiful moment.
Absolutely. Dan, you read, is that, do you see some commonalities just in your life, like in your pastoral life, types of things that Boova was talking about today, and kind of those, I don't know, turning points or whatever for folks on being able to trust God with things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny as a young preacher. I remember what's one of the buzzwords: "Give it to Jesus." Yeah. And I'd said it many times. And one day I thought to myself, I don't even know what that means.
It's just a phrase.
Someone probably asked me, "How do you do that?" I thought, yeah. I mean, really, just give it to the cross. You'll go to Jesus. You have all these little phrases we throw out that sound good and religious and spiritual, but people are honestly I want to give it to Jesus.
Right.
I want to, and I'm struggle with that, and I don't know how, and I still don't know. And now I've gone through some of the Overeaters Anonymous stuff, and I thought what you said is echoing exactly what that is. Of course they'll say higher power or alcohol. All the Anonymouses. But we know who the higher power is.
Absolutely.
The one who called the 300 is Him. And so that is the challenge, to guide people on that walk when we're all walking it at the same time.
Right.
All I can say is, well, come with me, and let's do this, and you're going to have those moments, and you just call out to God and ask for help,
right,
like you did, and then you still have to get up and make that bread,
exactly.
or
right,
not have 6 Big Macs.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
There's effort. There is effort involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But you call out on God and His power and His help and His guidance, and that's in people trying to get out of affairs, to people with alcohol or drug addictions or food, or you name it. We all have our thing. It breaks my heart to walk that path with so many people. I don't know if we are more addictive now than we ever have been, or if it's just now we talk about it more,
right,
or something.
Yeah. Right.
But it just seems like everybody's addicted to something.
Yeah.
And gosh, I wish it wasn't so.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
Right. I mean, because I'm there too. Like I say, I'm on the food thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because now that you bring up this whole give it to God thing, I still, even after today, I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Like I cannot.
I just gave it to God.
I cannot define it, and I cannot quantify it. There wasn't any specific action. It was the choice of the matter that was, Father, you're my strength.
Yeah, I think it's give this moment to God.
Oh, absolutely. And I would agree with that more. Yeah.
Can I not done now.
Right. My addiction isn't gone. Like, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly not want food. Like, I'm certain that I will want. That's the whole reason I'm doing this fast, is the concept that food is an idol for me. It is something that gets in the way of God and I. I'm running to it for sustenance, for strength. I run to it from an emotional perspective. When I'm having a bad day, I want to eat. to be communal with people I want to eat. It defines me. And I'm tired of being defined by it and not the creator of this universe. I want Yahweh to be the thing that sustains me. Or I want God to be the one that is my bread and my water, things like that. And so, like, I don't know how to quantify the statement of give it to God. All I know is that it was a moment of revelation of identity to me that I can trust him. And that's not to say that I won't have a weak moment tomorrow.
Right.
You know, it's not fixed. The ailment isn't gone, and I won't be trusting forever for the rest of my life. But I can certainly call upon this, and it's kind of the same concept that Ben and I have actually been talking about for a couple weeks of putting up altars. You know, I want to put up an altar today to let everyone know that God is trustworthy and God is faithful. Today is proof of that. I woke up not being able to handle the stressors of the day, and I ran to God with my problems. And for lack of a better phrase, I gave it to God, and I found success in Him. And that's exactly what happened. Was when I stopped realizing, or when I stopped thinking about myself as the one that's fighting, just decided to step back and let the God be the one who fought for me. Mm-hmm. He's the one who tramples my enemies, not me. I've never understood David in the Psalms more than today with the whole God trample my enemies under your feet. Bring them to me broken down. Exactly what happened today. Mm-hmm. I had enemies this morning, and I was not the one who needed to go out to battle. God was, and that's exactly what happened. You know, there's this verse in Psalm 20 I think it's 27. It's some trust in chariots and others in horses, but we will trust in the name of the Lord, and that's exactly true. God doesn't fight conventionally. It doesn't matter what swords he has, and it doesn't matter how many camels he has, and whether there's chariots involved. It's just him that causes victory. And that's throughout the Bible. The major battle scenes that we see in the Old Testament, all the way up to the battle scene in Revelation, God's presence and existence is what defines that win. And it's actually kind of funny in Revelation. There's really no battle. Jesus just shows up and everything's done.
Yeah.
But that's it. He's victory, and it's for his boast today. If I would have just gone through today and said, yeah, I went great and my addiction sucked, but I had a great day and I just didn't eat, there's one thing. But instead, I get to boast for the name of the Lord because I ran to him and cried out to him as my papa and as my father to handle the situation, to trample underfoot, and now I get to boast for his glory today rather than my own. And I just now recognize that until right now. That's exactly how that happened.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hope you are. That was encouraging. Thank you for Boova for sharing on kind of what's going on, things that God has done. Right.
Yeah.
And actually, so I'll make this super quick, but like this seems minor. This was a big thing to me. I've been struggling the last few weeks just on stuff that I've been teaching, and it just didn't feel like it was going well, and I was worrying that God's word is good, and when I don't do a good job, I'm like, crap, I'm not being faithful in the things I'm trying to do. And so I was real close to that even this Sunday, just before I was going to start talking on stuff, and I just was praying and saying, God, I need you to sort this out for me, because like however I'm thinking about it, I just can't get it sorted out. And within kind of 2 minutes of as I was praying that thing, things just kind of aligned, and it wasn't miraculous. Like I didn't do anything genius on what I taught about, but like God cleared a path for something that has been I've been struggling with for the last 3 weeks, and there is no explanation. I'd been thunking about it. I'd done plenty of that, and it not resolved itself. It resolved itself then, and so it's just the same size altar. I'll build it right there. I think the Lord stepped in and helped me with something that I really needed help with, and trying to do something right in His service. And so
that's awesome.
Things that God has done.
That's awesome.
Good news.
I love that.
Okay, all right. We are going to skip advice.
Okay.
No advice this week. So we're glad. I thank you guys so much for hanging out. Like I said, we'll be out next week. That's on me because I won't be here. But then we'll be back in the saddle starting back in August. And so we appreciate you hanging out. If you got anything you want to talk to us about, you can use the complaint line 515-517-0085. We do love to hear from you. And we do love that you guys are, spend time hanging out with us. I was looking, actually, I just added the podcast. My oldest kid wanted to the Live from the Path podcast on her phone, and got 200 episodes going back just 5 years on. There's plenty of Live from the Path to dig up on as we're out a week. So you want to do that, go ahead and jump in. In the meantime, be faithful means God will handle the ends. You've been listening to Live from the Path.